Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, have asked a friend to choose a Doctor Who story to nominate their favourite things about it. I then have to watch, commentate along, and try to guess what my guests' favourite things are.
So, I'm Andrew Smith. I'm a writer, and in relation to Doctor Who, I wrote Full Circle. And for the last 10 years plus, I've contributed several stories to the Big Finish audio ranges for Doctor Who and other titles. So, Toby, for my contribution to this excellent series of yours, I selected The Dominators.
Welcome back, everybody. Toby Haydock here, watching The Dominators. One of the only 3 5-part serials in Doctor Who history, and one of 2 that wasn't originally intended to be 5 parts. But maybe we'll get into that at some point later in proceedings. I, as you heard, have been set to the task of watching this story by Andrew Smith, writer of a great Doctor Who story, Full Circle. Before this podcast, I would not have considered The Dominators to be great, apart from for a story with mining being a great bore. However, I've quite enjoyed parts 1 and 2. So let's see what we make. I mean, that's with the caveat that I'm deliberately trying to be positive. Were I to be holding it up against other Troughtons, I think it might struggle. But nonetheless, I am trying to accentuate the positive, and I have managed so to do in my head. So I've been enjoying this. So there's nothing wrong with that. So let's see what happens on the planet Dulkis. Even a kiss from one of the Dulcians would be dull. They're those kind of people. Let us watch episode 3, starting in 3, 2, 1. So I will ask Alexa, Volume 5. Sorry, I always forget to do something. There's quite a lot to set up when you do these things. I film it from a couple of angles. I have to set up the microphone. Alexa, Volume 4. And I always forget to do something. Anyway, here we are. At least it shows that, just in case you weren't sure, this is very much a one-man band, which is why I would send you in haste to my Patreon page to enable me to maybe do these things better. Anyway, look, everyone's prone to forget things, as the production team of The Dominators were, because whoever's job it was to stick up the episode 3 caption, which presumably might have been in that filmed reprise, forgets to do. So is this the only classic series Doctor Who without an episode caption? Maybe. I love Maurice Barry's thing of going, let's just get the Dominators to stand on the hill with a quark, and Ronald Allen there with one foot slightly askew and higher than the other looks great. And Maurice Barry does like his crash zooms, which are rather funky. That was quite a nice, as the Dominators came together and the camera was moving too. He really is a different beast. I don't think he's the most imaginative studio director, but he keeps it funky with the camera. I don't, maybe, that he had gifted film cameramen who he allowed to do whatever they wanted, but certainly the shooting of the Tomb of the Cybermen film stuff is gorgeous. Zoe's had to hoik up her dress strap there. That had fallen askew. Never noticed that before. I don't normally look for such things, let's be honest. I think the quarks look rather good, actually. They slightly plod a bit when their feet are going up and down. But no, other than that, good. I like this performance here, but I remember sort of reading the cast list and going, I don't know who Bovim is, I don't know what he does, and he's the other counsellor, but it's Alan Gerard is nicely nicely sort of pompous. And I remember, did I say this last episode? Sorry, it's been a couple of days since I saw the last episode, so forgive me if I repeat myself. But the Dominators repeats itself quite a lot. I won't threaten to destroy you and then get interrupted by my superior 100 times. So, but Alan Gerard is very good, or very different at least, in an episode of The Avengers that I saw him in, playing a tattooist. Kenneth Ives is he's Hawkeye in the BBC Last of the Mohicans, where he headlines above two of the world's best actors, Philip Maddock and John Abineri. But he's decent. He's good as Hawkeye. Often those heroes are the least. I mean, he's no Daniel Day-Lewis. It's a very BBC early 70s Hawkeye. But I'd forgotten. Well, it hadn't quite. I'd always considered the Dominators to be just sort of large-shouldered fellows, but the sort of tortoise things really sticking out to me on this particular watch. And I don't think that's a ludicrous idea. With limited resources, we're often, come on, how many episodes of Star Trek have I seen, or Star Trek spin-offs where it's a humanoid with a lumpy face, and that was with much bigger resources at their disposal. So, an attempt to change the body shape, and the actors seem to be sort of, looming and poking their heads out. It's Walter Fitzgerald was a fine and highly regarded actor, but he's totally wasted here. Doctor Who has a bit of that going on during this period. I mean, Esmond Knight was a hugely respected actor and plays Domi Sigri in the Space Pirates. Nobody even bothered to take a photograph of him. Troughton's great, isn't he? And yeah, did I? What now? I've got to remember what I nominated last time. Oh, it was Troughton playing the fool, and in episode 1, it doesn't matter. I don't. I think it was something to do with the nuclear power, wasn't it? Because I've got Ronald Allen's excellent performance in reserve. Oh, I do like Arthur Cox. He was also the driver, regulars that popped in and out of Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister, as the driver. I saw him play Sir Andrew Aguecheek at the Ludlow Festival, directed by Arturo Avila from the War Games, and his no, he wasn't Andrew Aguecheek. He was Sir Toby Belch, and Andrew Aguecheek, his partner in crime, was Giuliano from The Mask of Mandragora. I was so lucky being brought up in Ludlow, because you'd have this visiting theatre company, and there was usually somebody from Doctor Who, or quite a few people from Doctor Who. Who else was in that? Doesn't matter, you don't care. I think Maria was, because she was married to Michael Napier Brown, Arturo Villa, was Vilma Hollingbury, who's the lady whose leg grows back in The Doctor Dances. Anyway, it's actually it's batting back and forth from the various scenes with a certain amount of pace. And what is he playing? Subbuteo? What on earth is Walter Fitzgerald doing with that thing on the table? It's almost like he just got bored there and went, there's a bit of the set here, I'll play with this Weeble. It's a Weeble that wobbles and it won't fall down. What on earth was that? Maybe I wasn't paying attention, and he said, I shall consult the Space Weeble, or the Weeble of Peace. Oh, you've got me there, says the Doctor. It's so lovely. Now, did I mention last week that the 2 non-speaking council members have a Quatermass connection? One is Aubrey Danvers Walker, who pops up in all sorts of other stuff as well. And the Danvers Walkers were quite a family. There's there's a Michael Danvers Walker who's an actor who's an Out of the Unknown and was an extra in the Quatermass Experiment. He's, I think, one of the last survivors of the Quatermass Experiment. I've corresponded with Michael a couple of times, and Aubrey was, I think, also called Bob Danvers Walker and was also a playwright, but did tiny parts on telly or extra work. And actually, Michael Danvers Walker is sometimes just credited as Danvers Walker, and is in an episode of The Prisoner. I love these two, Ronald Mansell and John Cross, as the gossipy old extra, not extra, but unnamed sort of the chorus. They're like the Arak and Etta of the Dulkis Council. Is this sort of gossipy, pedantic pair, pointless bureaucrats. And the other one who you don't see as much as you see of Aubrey Danvers Walker is Malcolm Watson, who is the only person to be in all three of the original Quatermasses. That's quite a spooky shot. They're looking at the. There's always something I think looking at a television screen and a monster comes on. It's sort of. I think there's something to do with the fact that you can't affect it and you can't touch it, and the person that you're trying to communicate with has been usurped by a creature and all the incongruity that goes with that. I like that. That was effective. I think the Quarks are actually rather. I think I've rather taken the Quarks for granted in previous viewings. I think they're nice. A nice design. I think I will talk about the voice, but I'll finish on Malcolm Watson. Bernard, you come, Dad? Oh, Bernard was going to come and join me, and he's gone to sit on another chair. That's a shame. Malcolm Watson is also an extra in the Quatermass Experiment, as is Aubrey Danvers Walker. They were in the same scenes together, actually. But then Malcolm Watson is has a credit as a member of the Commission in Quatermass 2, and a credit and some lines as the museum attendant in episode 1 of Quatermass in the Pit. So he's in all three of the 1950s Quatermass serials, but I think this is his only Doctor Who, and he died in the early 70s, 71, 72, I think. Now, the Quarks. Here's a thing. Oh, I think I mentioned this last time. The voices, I think, are a brilliant idea. I think they just need a bit of chatty malevolence. And they don't quite pull it off. The book, I remember, I did mention this last time from Ian Marter, he's very good at sort of, I love the way, this is brilliant, the way that they all walk past and give their opinion. Those two stand there, Zoe and Callie stand there, sort of, doing the, we should do something, or should we? And Balan and everybody sort of walk past with their hexagonal rocks and go, Balan goes, we should submit, because I'm the old stick in the mud. Kando goes, no, I'm a bit useless and the lady, so I need to back up Balan. And then Teal goes, yes, but I'm a bit of a go-between, and also I'm the young heroic boy, and so therefore I will show a little bit of vim and vigour and a propensity to perhaps break out of the otherwise entrenched pacifism that will destroy us all. So, and I don't know. It's almost like you need something from Balan and Kando to make them both a bit more interesting. I like the bit in episode 1 where Kando is doing her. I'm going to tell you the stuff that I've learnt, and Balan is prompting her. I think that's rather nice. But thereafter, the story isn't quite sure what to do with them, apart from them to repeat the mantra that, we're very submissive and it'll all be fine. Troughton's really trying. Remember Rob saying he feels that Troughton's not great in this, and it's his laziest performance. But I think if you're rewiring Rob Shearman, that is, in Running Through Corridors, if you're rewiring a travel capsule and you end up with your head underneath the camera and your legs sticking in the air, I think you're having a go at trying to make it interesting. I think those head shapes I think because it means that their heads can turn completely around, and you get the impression that they're looking at you whichever way they are. And I quite like that, and the sort of round bits within the different sections of the head. I think the Quarks are great, and that they were in a Doctor Who magazine store comic strip. Was it a one-off? Because I didn't have many copies of Doctor Who magazine. I only had the ones that had been sort of bestowed by a friend or were lying around. And I remember it seeming that they were rather special because they'd got their own spin-off. But it's a bit odd to go, our replacement for the Daleks, our brand new aliens, are servants of these other aliens that are essentially tall actors shouting at each other. Because unless, they had a plan, I guess, with the Daleks, of going, that main thing about them, that they can't move outside of their own city. Now that they're really popular, we'll forget about that and they can do whatever they blooming well like. Would I wonder the Quarks have returned and it just be like, I thought they could only be servants of the mighty Dominators, and somebody went, no, they've outgrown them, or the Dominators are all up in the spaceship up there, or whether we would have had to have always had a pair of Dominators to accompany the Quarks as they became the next big thing in the Doctor Who universe, which they were prevented from being because the writers fell out with Derek Sherwin because he felt that this story needed to lose an episode. And I remember in the Doctor Who magazine special where they interviewed every single producer, which I remember being really disappointing to me. It's mad now because it's a brilliant thing to have done, because I wanted pictures from stories and I wanted cast lists and all of that sort of thing. There's a Doctor Who magazine summer special with an interview with every producer. I remember Derek Sherwin saying, we lost an episode of the Dominators. And because I was so fixated on missing episodes, I thought that he meant we lost an episode, i.e. there was an episode missing. And that meant the fact that we had them all now meant that one had been found. It's amazing how you can sort of misinterpret something. But bear in mind, I was very young. But of course, what he meant was they lost an episode of the Dominators, i.e. this was supposed to be a 6-parter, and they decided there's not enough going on, so truncated it down to 5, which is a surprise because I have to say, I think the Abominable Snowmen and the Web of Fear neither outstay their welcome, and actually the way that both build to a climax. I think the Abominable... we know that we always think of the Web of Fear as being quite hard-nosed because it's modern and it's military, but actually the way that episode 5, I think, of the Abominable Snowmen builds to a climax is really quite action-packed and gritty and rather fabulous. But there is with this, it doesn't seem. I don't think you could ever get gritty with these, betogered old guys, who much as I enjoy the bickering of the two sort of chorus figures, this is not the most dynamic of environments. Even though Brian Cant from Playaway comes in. I'm now obsessed with that Perspex Subutio man on the table. What was Walter Fitzgerald doing with it? But Brian Cant doesn't need it. He's doing I'm holding my wedding ring finger acting, which is always a good trick for an actor if you're not quite sure what to do with your hands. It means you don't have them by the side, but it means you're also not gesticulating with them. Very, very, very sensible piece of. Let's get rid of these flappy limbs. I need to do something. I love the fact that they need to call in a man to go. So we're not quite sure what to do. Let's get our specialist in. And he goes, well, and it's almost like these are 3 official subsections of Dulkian modus operandi. What is it? Fight. Flee or surrender, or something like that, and it's and the idea that you need somebody to sort of do an inquiry to boil it down to those 3 choices, I think, is rather quaint. And I think Tenser's supposed to be the sort of young, thrusting member of the committee, He's the sort of hot-headed maverick MP who's coming up through the ranks. And I love the fact that it's Brian Cant, who I watched recently on Happy Times and Places, being Kurt Gantry, hard-bitten space hero, security service guy, mortally wounded Dalek fodder in episode 1 of the Daleks Master Plan. But of course, to generations of English viewers, he was a children's TV favourite in a programme called Play Away, and is something of a very welcome piece of the televisual furniture, and one of those people. It was quite a surprise when you grew up to realise was an actor. You sort of thought of your people on children's television as children's television guys, but actually he's a perfectly good character actor. And there are some play school presenters who were fine actors who've cropped up in Doctor as well. I think Colin Jevons did play school, didn't he? And Chris Tranchell and all sorts. And Jeremy Irons did Play Away. So we typecast actors at our peril, and indeed theirs, because then it makes you go, should I take this job? Because what if somebody watching thinks that's all I can do? And Brian Cant also has a Who claim to fame. Well, not claim to fame, but nice connection is that his son, Richard Cant, is the guy that knocks on the door with the letter for Sally Sparrow from her friend Miss Nightingale, who's been sent back in time, and says, this I got this from my grandmother. She gave it to me and told me to come to this house on this day. That's Richard Cant, who's a fine, busy character actor in his own right. I saw him on stage with an old chum of mine, and with Jeff Stretfield and with Matt Bardock and various others in My Night with Reg at the West End a few years ago. That's why it's handy that the museum has a working laser gun in it, even though if I was in charge of health and safety on Dulkis, I would go, I think we maybe decommission this. That's a nice close-up of Arthur Cox. And I like the Quark's head in the sights of the laser gun. That's quite sort of tense. There's always a bit tense when you've got something in the sights because you're expecting somebody to pull the trigger. And Jamie's walked in with his size 10s and ruined it all. And now, is he missed? Yeah, he can't shoot them now. That's a shame, because you're kind of hoping that he's going to laser blast a Quark. And what I like about the Quarks as well is that they've got the two arms that you see sticking out, but then beneath that they've got another two things that look like they could be arms or they could have attachments. And I think anything that looks like it's got, you could stick a claw on the end or do something differently with it, or that has potential to do something that humans can't do. It's like a Swiss Army bot, isn't it? The Quark, potentially with that design, I think is rather winning and rather fun. And I really like the way that they recharge as they do later and equalise their power. This is brilliant. Troughton just acted that superbly, because he ducked before he came back up again, so it made the journey up to the sort of shoulders, not quite making the shoulders of Toba, even more of a comic juxtaposition. I love all these shots of the Quarks in the valleys with with their slaves moving around. We've got to keep an eye on Troughton's location double, because so actually, if that film had been in phase, which it's not, we could have had a little look at his face there, but it was so blurry and it was such a quick movement. They sort of get away with it. But I love all this stuff on film and I think they look good. And Kenneth Ives is putting a lot of energy into it. Sometimes when you play, an alien, you can sort of stride around much more slowly, because that's supposed to be sort of slightly more dignified. But he puts a lot of energy into it, and he's good. Kenneth Ives, he's good. I think it's just quite a tricky part, because he's just a hothead and a sadist, but he puts loads into it. I like the Quarks zappy with the laser. Good the way that they move there. But I think so. We're going to pretty much have the same cliffhanger as before, but this time it's Jamie and Cully in the museum. Now that's slightly awkward because when we saw the Quark before, a bit's just fallen off him. He was in studio, and then we've cut to location, and I think that's always a little bit awkward because it points to the fact that we're not. I think it would have been a bit more helpful to have. Oh, that's good though that the Quark's head is wobbling even after it's blown up. Yeah, it's a slightly awkward mix between studio and location there. But it means we get the impression that there are more Quarks than there actually are. And it means that we get a Clark. That's what we've been waiting to see all episode. Not that, a piece of cardboard falling onto Arthur Cox. But a Quark getting zapped and blown to bits. And that was fun. So the museum is the most unfortunate museum in the history of museums, this. But that's a nice shot. And he's enjoying that. But you can never, because that's studio, you can never do a particularly massively satisfying explosion. That set's looking a bit the worse for wear, really, isn't it? But we're sort of back where we started, except this time it's Jamie and Cully rather than Zoe and Cully. But plenty in there, yeah. I think so. I've just got to remember, because I can't choose what Andrew has already chosen. He chose the Quarks, didn't he, for episode 1, and then something really random for episode 2. For episode 3, Ronald Allen wasn't in that much, was he? I'm tempted to choose my council members, but I do recall they have a really good bit next episode, so I might save them. I'm saving things up for the future, which can be foolhardy. But I think my favourite thing about that episode has got to be exploding Quarks, and there's quite a few, and I seem to recall there's a lot of fun later on when Cully and Jamie just spend the whole thing charging around, dropping rocks and blowing up Quarks, and that's part of the fun of this story. I think is there's only 3 Quark actors, but there are more Quark robots, within the story. It's just they're cleverly filmed, and it's cheated, and I think as a result, one of the positive things we get, because I'm still a child at heart, and if I want to enjoy watching robots getting blown to smithereens, I can, and I love the way that it cut to that blown up Quark and its head was still moving. That was, if you were watching that in the 60s or as a kid, you'd go, whoa, that's just amazing. And because we were sort of promised it a couple of times with I thought very well done, the Quarks in Cully's sights, then Jamie comes in, or is it? So they teased us a couple of times, and then boom, Explodo Quark. So exploding Quarks is my favourite thing about episode 3 of the Dominators. What is going to be Andrew Smith's favourite thing about episode 3 of the Dominators?
Okay, now it's time to pick my favourite thing from episode 3. And again, it's a fairly close run thing. And the one I nearly went for was some of the best fake rock lifting that I think we've seen in the history of the series, right across the cast of Dulcians and Zoe, Wendy Padbury, doing their slave bit for the Dominators. Although I think there was at least one that Cully was carrying that was an actual genuine rock, seeing as they didn't have Foley artists at that time, I don't think, for when he dropped the rock and it went clunk on the studio floor. But no, it wasn't that. That wasn't quite my favourite thing. My favourite thing was Brian Cant appearing as Tensa. I'd forgotten he was in it. And he comes in and he's a breath of fresh air, really, this much younger guy amongst these fairly interchangeable Dulcian leaders who are all, pretty much of a muchness. He comes in and he does a really good job in a short scene, but the right amount of gravity and earnestness, and Yeah, very good. And also there is a personal angle to this, as with the Quarks. Brian Cant, again, takes me back to my childhood. Remember him so well in Play School and Play Away. So Brian Cant as Tensa was my favourite thing in episode 3.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good choice. And what I love about Doctor Who, well, there's many things I love about Doctor Who, but I love the fact that it's a programme that allows us to have somebody like Brian Cant, who, I may be wrong, but I suspect he didn't get as many sort of straight acting roles as he might have liked or deserved, or an actor of his capabilities would, because of being associated with children's programs and stuff like that. But because Doctor Who has this slightly fantastical element, because it's a bit of the televisual furniture where the rules are not quite the same as they are in other programs. And I know other programs, sometimes cast people against type and you get surprising appearances from, a comedian in Casualty or something like that. But I think Doctor Who does allow us to have, performances from comedians playing straight roles and therefore being a bit of a surprise, or somebody that's well known. I mean, really early on, Alan Wheatley was well known for playing a villain, the TV villain, the villainous Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, is immediately cast as the peacefulest man of peace of the most peaceful races of all, as Temesis in the Daleks early on in the show. And that's kind of set the show up to go, we will give actors a chance, actors who you will associate with other things, because we need people that you kind of know and like and are comfortable with, because we're going to take you to crazy alien worlds. But we're going to throw down the gauntlet and say, but come on, do something that you're not used to doing. And they'll go, this is brilliant, because I'm normally asked to, dance a jig and say, hello, children, or I'm normally asked to be villainous and I'm being heroic, or, whatever it is, or I'm normally asked to be funny and I'm being a baddie, or, whatever. Or in Bernard Breslau's case, I'm normally used to being seen. But I really do like that about Doctor Who, and I'm aware that's very much me, because I'm an actor spotter and I like actors and all of that sort of thing, and I get great joy. But I do like it when actors are given a chance to do something different, because I know how nice that must have felt, and I think it adds to the great mosaic of what makes Doctor Who wonderful, that you can have Brian Cant, fixture and icon of children's television, play a hard-bitten, mortally wounded space guy, and then the thrusting young buck of Dulcian politics. So good choice. But I didn't choose it. I chose Exploding Quarks, and I love the fact that Doctor Who can have exploding quarks too. But Andrew chose Brian Cant as Tensa, and well, let's see if the story gets tenser as it continues next time. We'll reconvene then. But in the meantime, thanks very much for listening. Take care. Thank you very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock. My special guest this time around is Andrew Smith, who can be found on Twitter at Andrew Smith, capital A, capital S, and the E of Andrew is the number 3. I'm grateful to him and to the many patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Nick Tedston, Luke Atkins, Peter Adamson, John Arnold, Kevin Ashelford, Will Brooks, Richard Byatt, Robin Bland, Alex Kafajoglu, Paul Carnahan, Andy Case, John Curley, Mark Dakin, John Elledge, Sam Estirem, Gary Gillett, James Gould, Lisa C. Greco, David Green, Fraser Gregory, Dave Hoskin, Jessica Jones, and Andrew Jordan. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to join their number, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month, you can get mentioned on these podcasts, and you can also get advanced releases, bonus material, exclusive access, and all sorts of other things, including pictures of my dog. I know. And as I say, £3 a month is the lowest tier. They go up to, well, I mean, you can pay whatever you want, but £3 can also be reduced slightly if you sign up for a year, and then you get 10% off whatever tier you sign up for. 10% off if you sign up for a year in one go. That's patreon.com/Toby Haydock. If you can't commit to a monthly thing, but occasionally want to chuck something my way, you can go to kofi.com/Toby Haydock. That's very straightforward too. But I know times are tough, and they're getting tougher. So I'm just grateful to you for listening, and I hope these have brightened your day in some way, or at least just galvanised you, or just made you glad you're not me. But I'll tell you what you can do that costs you nothing, which would be really helpful to me if you can spare the time, is go to iTunes or Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts from and leave these a couple of lines of positive review and the all-important 5-star rating. Thank you. I'm a stand-up comedian too. I do a monthly show online at twitch.tv/XSMalarkey. That's the letter X, the letter S, and then Malarkey, Malarkey. That is the online version of the weekly comedy show I do in Manchester and have done for the past 24 years. Yes, I've been at the same place for 24 years. There's a career trajectory that no one wants to boast about. It's a not-for-profit comedy club that puts on the best comics from the live circuit, and we don't let in stag do's or hen do's or office parties. It's all about the comedy, and I'm the regular MC, and that's XS Malarkey in Manchester at the Bread Shed at 8 p.m. every Tuesday night. It's on Twitter at XS Malarkey if you want to find out more about it, and that Twitch channel has an archive of videos too. Well, as I'm recording this, very sadly, as so when I was doing the commentary for this, Kenneth Ives was still with us, but as I've been preparing this for putting up online for the patrons, it'll be later for you if you're non-patrons. That's just the way that the schedule falls. Kenneth died aged 87. I actually didn't write to him about Doctor Who. We'd tried to get him for the commentary and for the documentary for the DVD. It was one of the first commentaries I did, but John Kelly, the producer, said that Kenneth rang back and was very, very nice, but just said he didn't really talk about his past work, not his acting work anyway. I think he just didn't want to go back, but was perfectly nice and perfectly amiable. But we didn't get him, and it's odd because and then I wrote to him because he's got an uncredited part in the film of Quatermass in the Pit. I thought, well, maybe I'll try that, because maybe he just. But he always sent signed photos back to people who sent him photos of his Doctor Who. But I was trying to be a bit professional, so I didn't send a photo. I should have done, shouldn't I? But that sometimes doesn't work when I send a thing saying I'm being very professional and writing a thing. But I understand if you don't want to take part. But if you could just, if you don't want to take part, but use this stamp addressed envelope just to send back this signed picture, then I'll know. And that doesn't even work. And then people I know who just send a picture, get it signed and sent back. So there's no reason why some people sometimes reply and why sometimes they don't. Perhaps they forget. Perhaps they just hate me, or whatever, But it's a risky business. Anyway, so I never heard back from Kenneth, but I heard nice things from the people that he spoke to. And I don't know, chances are if I had a chance to speak to him, he remembered much anyway. And I've interviewed loads of people who've either not remembered much or what they have remembered hasn't been true. But yet I suppose it's selfish, I still like to have, it's like a notch on the bedpost, isn't it? But mine's not on the bedpost, it's on my character actors roster. I like to feel I've had a personal collection. I don't know why, but I don't know. So Kenneth, it was not to be. But nonetheless, what he leaves us is more important than that. He leaves us a lovely contribution to Doctor Who that we will watch forever and ever and ever. And that's not bad. So thanks, Kenneth Ives.